Valheim is a title that has bursted onto the scene kind of out of nowhere, for me at least. I saw a few of my favourite streamers like Bikeman trying it out, and it seemed to be quite an interesting concept, so I thought I'd give it a go, as I'm a fan of survival craft type games. And after playing it for the past couple of days, I'm absolutely loving it. I'm usually skeptical of a game that has an early access tag on Steam because they either come out buggy or broken mess. However, as long as the core game has a good premise, it's well polished and fun to play, I'm always happy to support it. Take Deep Rock Galactic for example, which is quite funny because the same publisher has also published this game, not developers but publisher, and after playing it these past few days, it has so much potential to be one of the best survival craft type games on Steam. For those who are unaware of this game, I'll quickly go over the premise and then we'll go into the pros and the cons of the game, and I'll finally come up with a verdict. So without further ado, this is my early access review for Valheim. So what is Valheim exactly? Well, it's a RPG survival craft sandbox type game that's set in a Viking fantasy sort of setting. You are put into a randomly generated world known as the 10th world. This can be played solo or co-op with up to 10 players on a server. You can build a base, craft weapons and armor, and explore the open world to see what it has to offer. So first, you create your character, male or female, with a few customization options. My character was to be named the almighty Viking warlord Volkswagen. You then get to choose your world name, and each world has a seed as the game is procedurally generated. Once all those settings are out the way, you're ready to play and you're ready to head into the world of Valheim. The introduction has you fly in on this giant raven who drops you off at a starting shrine, which indicates many of the bosses that you'll be fighting in the game, and I'll get to that later. A slightly less giant bird named Hugin is there to welcome you to the world, where you are then free to roam the land. The ultimate core objective is to slay these bosses known as the Forsaken, scattered around the map, and able to ascend to Valhalla. But, like other survival games, you're more than free to put this on the back burner and adventure at your own pace. So that's pretty much the premise of the game. I'll quickly talk about what it's like and what I love about it, and then I'll talk about what I don't like so much. But my core first impressions of this title is that this has so much potential. Kicking things off with the pros. So firstly, the most noticeable thing is the art style and the graphics. It's a really nice mix and blend between pixelated graphics with these lush lighting effects and god rays and colours. Each game environment is so vibrant and filled with life, it's just really nice to look at times. I'm playing the game running it at 1440p and mostly all the higher settings and running at a very smooth 60 frames per second a lot of the time. There are some dips which I'll get to later, but for the most part it's a very polished game. The sounds and the environments are really amazing and get you fully immersed into the world. You hear the brushing of the wind and the trees when you go through the forest biomes, and when you go to the snowy mountains you hear the snow and the blizzard-like atmosphere. Each biome you go into has its really unique feel, and every location feels different to one another. The combat, even though a little stiff, is still very serviceable with lots of room for improvement. I'll get to some nitpicking later about it. Crafting and building is fast and it's easy to learn, it's quickly accessible, it has levels and upgrades to it, and it's perfect for those who love the creativity side of these games. I'm someone who absolutely loves just building a massive base and a massive home that when I come back from my travels I can sit down, relax, put some food on the fire, and maybe either keep building or just simply take a breather. And you're going to need a breather from all the enemies that surround the world. See, the enemy variety is actually quite unique in this game. At the point I am at in the game, I'm only up to pretty much fighting wolves and trolls and skeletons and these things called greylings and these sort of dwarfling woodland-like creatures. If you go to the swamps or the lakes, you'll find these gecko-like lizard creatures called necks. And each of these enemies drop unique drops that add a lot to the crafting system. The crafting system in itself is really, really well done, I think. Instead of you being able to, in most games, rush and get a furnace built really easily, the game has some really cool locations and caves. And in these caves you will find these sort of forged smelting cores. And with 5 of them, you can make a furnace. You can make a machine that allows you to craft coal. And I think everything in the world has a very unique way of integrating itself into the crafting system. It means that when you are out on your travels, you have that sort of feeling of, oh, I could drop this, but then I'll be losing this. It's quite well done. Like I talked about earlier, there are boss fights in the game, with each boss has a certain reward and a unique ability to them. The example I can give is the first boss that I've fought so far, which is this big elk-like creature, this dark, evil elk. And once you've defeated this boss, you can take the trophy back to the starter shrine where the raven dropped you at the beginning of the game, and hang the trophy up on the hook, and that will give you access to a certain ability that you can have. There's a lot more bosses around in the world that give you these unique abilities, so you might want to do a good job of armoring up, getting some good weapons and fighting these bosses, because they can offer a lot of really cool abilities. And once again, it adds to your character and gives you some skills in a certain way. And every action you do contributes to levels to that certain skill. The way skills work in this game is, depending on a certain action you do, depends on how good you are at that action. For example, if I chop down a bunch of trees with an axe, not only does my axe level and my proficiency with axes get better, but I get a higher level in the department of tree chopping, making the next tree I chop down a bit easier because I'm a bit more experienced. The more you sprint and run out of breath, the better your stamina becomes as you level up the sprint tree. If you block an incoming enemy attack, your block level goes up. So on and so forth, and when you build these skills up, you become better at them. Although a skill tree would be nice, I think to begin with in this early access stage, it's quite a nice way of building your character up. So that's everything I've got to talk about the pros. I'm going to move into some of the cons, but they're mainly just nitpicks and things that I want to point out that the developers have all the time in the world to improve on. So first things first, the combat is a bit stiff, like I talked about earlier, and it can be a bit unresponsive. At the moment, I find using the bow and arrow the most efficient, as melee combat is a little bit weird, especially when you're fighting a bunch of enemies. For example, if an enemy is at an elevated height and you're slightly below or above that enemy, if you try to decide to swing your melee weapon at them, it's only on a level basis that you can hit that enemy. So if I'm above an enemy or below an enemy, and even if I aim at that enemy that's above me or below me, I still will just be hitting the rock or hitting the ground. Only on my same level can I hit that enemy. So there is a bit of balancing to do there, and there's some directional awareness that the game needs to get right. But like I said before, the bow and arrow combat is actually really, really well done. It can be fleshed out a little bit, but once again, in this early access stage, they're definitely gonna make improvements to the game, and they're still gonna flesh some of these things out. Enemy spawns are a little bit random at times. They can just kind of appear out of nowhere, even when there's no spawners about. There are some spawners in the world, these purple, glowy, sort of dark sort of spawners they can come from, and even after you destroyed them, the enemy spawns can be a bit weird. But if you don't want to be harassed by a bunch of enemies and get caught like I did, I recommend not going out at night. There are multiple ways you can get around in the world of Valheim, and one of them being a raft, and you can take to the seas and really explore the lands. But the rafting is a bit inconsistent. I'm not at the stage where I can build proper boats yet, which I'm pretty sure you can do at this stage of the game, but the rafts are a bit inconsistent and they're a little bit wonky. And there's not really any key bindings or any indication for what I can do with the raft, so I think as time goes on, I believe that they will patch this out a bit more and allow us to really experiment with these rafts, and boats for that matter. I think one of my biggest complaints about this title is the inventory management. It's a bit sloppy. So when you press tab to open up your inventory, you have your basics, like how much armor you have, what skills need upgrading, or just your skills in general. My biggest nitpick, I believe, is that in a lot of games, survival type games, you have sort of an outline of your character, a body as you will, and you will be crafting weapons and armor, and the armor system in this game takes up a certain inventory slot, which I'm not a big fan of. I would much prefer if once we have crafted, say, a helmet or some leggings, I'd rather physically put them onto my legs and my head, not exactly keep them in my inventory and right click, because A, it takes up an inventory slot, and B, it's just a bit untidy. It's a bit weird having it there. I would much appreciate it if they did the standard and had a separate inventory screen where we can kind of drag and drop our clothes and our armor set in onto our character, making it so we don't run out of space quickly, and also it just looks a bit nicer and a bit cleaner. And when you open up your inventory, you can see exactly what bits of armor you've got on, and it just looks more presentable. I did touch upon the optimization a little bit, but I will go over it a little bit more now. So the optimization, even though it's great at most times, it can still drop frames, and the only times it does stutter for just half a second, it's when it's saving the world, but the game can still drop frames. I mainly had my textures were on high, and I put some of the other settings down to medium, but for the most part the game looks stunning on these settings, and if you've got a good computer you shouldn't have a hard time running this game. But like a lot of early access games in the past, this game has so much time, and it now has the funds to really work on its optimization and really work on optimizing the game for systems of all generations. So my overall thoughts of Valheim is this: the game has so much potential, and I'm looking forward to spending a lot more time in this game and supporting it through its development process. Despite some of the cons, despite some of the nitpicking I've been doing, and despite some of the weird things about this game, Valheim is still easily a must-buy at the moment for those who love these survival craft type games. And I'm not the only one with this opinion, because if you look at the Steam sales and if you look at the user reviews, I think a lot of people are saying the same thing that I am. I really hope they do put a lot of care, attention and love into this title, because this, like I said before, has so much potential and could easily be one of the best survival craft games on Steam. And that, everyone, is my review for Valheim. Let me know if you've played the game, let me know if you're enjoying it or not. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, I would much appreciate you leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Once again, thank you for watching. Take it easy, stay safe everyone, and have a good day.